Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everybody. You know that you should be eating right. It was, I believe, Socrates who said that food is medicine. And we've heard it for many years about nutrition. We're going to dig deeper into that today, and especially with the eye on seniors. And that's on her radar. She's the founder of the Center for Ageless Living in New Mexico, and they put an eye on nutrition very heavily. In fact, so much, in fact, that they even have their own gardens there. Looking forward to learning more from Suzette Lindemuth, who joins us today on the program. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
It is spring. You've been in the garden. What's going on out there?
I have been. Well, things are growing. We've had an early spring here, which I'm sure everybody across the country is experiencing some strange weather, as we know. And we know that it's going to get a little bit cold here, too. So we're a little hesitant to start putting too much into the gardens. But now is the time to start, planning and planting and getting your soils ready. And we do believe that eating is extremely important to aging well. And we focus a lot of that at the Center for Ageless Living with our gardens. In the past, we've had certified organic gardens. Prior to COVID, we couldn't continue that during the COVID. And of course, gardening is a lot of work, and it takes energy and it takes a commitment. And now we've scaled down so that we can manage our gardens a little bit more appropriately with the resources we have. But we also have our own orchards, and so we have fruit trees. We have 2 almond trees that produce almonds every 3 years. And we recycle all of our water and our own treatment plants, so we're very sustainable. And we have about 365 plants on the campus that we use in various ways, from flowers and roses for decorating and for taking into the homes, as well as all of our fresh herbs that we grow in the gardens for our restaurant and for the food that we serve the seniors.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I'm intrigued here. When a garden like that is certified organic, what do you have to go through? I never even pondered that.
Well, we used to have a whole 3/4 acre under cultivation with raised beds, and the certification process is a little, like every government program, it's a little tedious, but we recognized that we were already meeting those standards. So it's just a matter of documenting your use of certified organic seeds that you're using. Obviously, lack of pesticides and herbicides that are creating a disruption to our planet. Those things are banned through the certified organic process. We're documenting everything, our harvests, how much we're bringing in, when we're planting, rotation of certain crops. So we were doing that anyway, and we just felt if we could document it, we could be certified. So we did that for about 3 years. There is a cost involved to do that. And then at some point we just felt we just couldn't meet that standard any longer with the resources we had, and we just continue to use organic practices, but we no longer go through the certification process.
Either way, that garden in general, as you describe it, you're not messing around. You take it very seriously.
Well, and I do think it has created an environment where our seniors live a little longer than maybe expected. And I think it is because we use a lot of fresh herbs, and that's one of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about how easy it is to integrate healthy eating. You said, you're right. There's so much information out there, and I'm not a nutritionist. So I like to take a real common sense kind of approach to eating well. And I think everybody knows that, processed foods are, not the greatest thing to eat. And everybody does eat processed foods. We get it. But if you can focus on your own production in your gardens, or buy locally at your farmers markets, and then learn to cook. And I think a lot of us were sort of forced to learn to cook during COVID, which was probably a good thing. So there were some good things that came out of COVID, and I think that was one of them. And I do think that cooking and eating well and using your table as a community base to bring together your family to talk about the events of the day is a wonderful way to create family and community, is eating together.
What's your suggestion for seniors or anyone to keep eating vegetables interesting? That's what happens for me. I get bored. How do you change it up?
Well, I think that's where fresh herbs and integrating, herbs and different flavors into your standard vegetable selection that you have. So it's extremely easy to plant and to grow herbs. I mean, you can literally grow them in a small container on your kitchen sink. You can grow them in leftover cans that you had from vegetables.
Sure.
And, if you grow fresh herbs, you can harvest them and dry them and you can use them throughout the year. But we're talking about like thyme, oregano, parsley, basil. You can grow ginger. You can grow turmeric. Those are all herbs that are easily combined into seasonings for vegetables. Like cauliflower is one of those vegetables that, really you can roast it, you can parboil it, you can fry it, you can shred it into rice, you can do so many things. And then if you're seasoning it with all those different herbs, especially like turmeric, you can almost push it into like an Indian style dish and use it as a very creative way to continue to eat vegetables. And I think that's true of, all your vegetables. You can do that. I mean, broccoli is another one that's very good for you. We eat a lot of broccoli. You can season it with all sorts of, garlic and broccoli together is lovely. You can saute garlic. You can roast it. You can do a lot of things with garlic, with broccoli. And so, but I think growing herbs and I think gardening in general is so healthy. We know that people that garden live longer. There's a lot of studies about the blue zones around the world, which are where individuals are living consistently over the age of 100. And most of those environments are eating local produce, but almost all of those environments are also harvesting and growing their own foods. And so there is this connection between growing and gardening. Obviously it takes physical strength. It's a community activity. You're out in nature. So gardening is probably, if there's nothing else that you want to do in your life, it's go out and plant a few things. And I would plant herbs, which you can use in cooking. And it's easily transferred right into your lifestyle. And I think it's been extremely beneficial for us at the center to cook with fresh herbs. We love tarragon, we love garlic, we love rosemary, parsley, thyme. All of those herbs, I think, are incredibly easy to grow and integrate into your cooking.
I totally get what you're saying. Once you open the door to the herbs and the seasonings, it's fabulous. Every morning for breakfast, I like turkey meatballs. Good source of protein, not a lot of fat. Maybe I'll add like a little carb to it, like half English muffin or whatever. Every morning, I have Italian seasoning on it. I put on garlic and game changer. And you mentioned turmeric. That is my new passion. Like I put turmeric in water. I just love it. I love the flavor. And as I understand, it's actually good for you and has anti-cancer, anti-inflammation properties.
Yeah, and almost all the herbs, and then when we look at our medicines, all our medicines come basically from nature and from herbs. And so Sure. You can see how eating just that direct herb is going to improve your health. So you're right. They're anti-inflammatory. They're probiotic. They are just a wonderful source. I don't memorize everything they do because I can Google it and I can read it to you. Mm-hmm. But you can Google it too.
Sure.
And I think, I think it's easy. It's such an easy thing to do. And I had a mission a couple of years ago to contact every assisted living facility in New Mexico and have them start herb gardens just to make sure that everybody was eating fresh herbs at these assisted living facilities. And I had a few of them that did embrace it and continue to grow their own fresh herbs. And like I said, it's nothing hard to do, and you don't really need a lot of space. I just wanted to share a little trick because I found this a couple years ago, and it's so amazing. So when you're growing herbs and then you have them and you want to dry them, and then of course there's always that, that the dried herbs don't seem as flavorful or seem as, they're just not as flavorful as fresh herbs. Mm-hmm. So when I dry my herbs and I use dried herbs, and you can use herbs that you have bought also, but I dry my own herbs and I have them in bags. And then I have this special little coffee grinder. And so I bought a coffee grinder specifically for grinding my dried herbs. So I put all my dried herb mixture, like if you're making let's just say you're doing a Cajun dish and you're using oregano and you're using rosemary and you're using cayenne pepper and you're using black pepper and salt. Put everything into a little grinder and grind it, and it releases the oils and the original aroma flavor of the dried herbs. And it's just an amazing little tool. It's extremely simple to do, and it will enhance the flavors of the dried herbs 10 times. It's just amazing. And so I have one for coffee beans and I have one for dried herbs. And basil is one of those herbs that when you dry it, it looks horrible. I mean, it gets a funny color and it doesn't really seem to have much smell. And you put it in this little coffee grinder and literally it's like, woo, I wish I could have you guys smell the ground up basil. But, and rosemary is the same way. You know, the rosemary leaf is a little coarse and a little hard to digest. And, you know, you can buy ground rosemary, but you can grind it yourself. And the fragrance that comes from pulverizing dried herbs, you'll be shocked. And it's a game changer for cooking. And I think it's a little trick, and I think everybody should get a coffee grinder for herbs. So that's my trick of the day.
Oh, I appreciate that. I'm going to stand by. I'm going to ask you for more in a moment, but I want to focus on the grinder. Do you need to add water or anything to the herbs before you grind them?
No.
Amazing.
You put them in dried and it will, you know, it'll pulverize them, and it's so fast and easy. And, you know, you're only talking about, you know, maybe 2 or 3 tablespoons that you're using in a dish. And so it's extremely easy to use.
Wow.
But it's just, I was shocked at how the difference of using dried herbs. And now I use it whenever I'm using any kind of dried herb, whether or not it's something I've bought or something I've made. So I have because I grow the thyme, the oregano, tarragon, which are sort of what we call the herbes de Provence. I put together all of those together in packets, give them away to friends, and then when I use them, I put them directly into the grinder and pulverize them. And then I have a more refined herbes de Provence.
Wow. All right, let's go back out to the garden. Any insight or tips that you can share, be it soil or anything connected to it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that, you know, one of the things that happens as we get older, it's a little harder to get up and down off the ground. So I would encourage everybody to think about putting in some kind of raised beds or purchasing raised beds so that you can reach them. And I made a big mistake, and when I put in my raised beds, which I put in many, many years ago, and I made them very wide because I thought, I'll reach in from each side. I can reach 3 feet. So instead of making them 6 feet wide, where you could reach in 3 on each side, they came out to be about a little over 7 feet. So the very middle of the raised beds, I literally can't reach. I have to climb up into the bed to get to the middle of the raised bed. So whatever you do not do that. So what I strategized was down the middle of the bed, since I can't reach it, I have now put in bulbs, flowering bulbs. So right now, in the middle of all my raised gardening beds, and I have 3 of them, I have flowers coming up. And so they'll flower and they'll grow all year long. And then on each side of the flowers down the middle of the bed, I'm going to be putting in lettuce and spinach, radishes. I have my garlics already planted, so the garlic's about this tall already. And so, but, you know, right now, you know, early spring crops, peas are going in. We are doing hoop houses here, so we do cover our beds. Hoop houses are really super easy to make. You can get rebar and put rebar across from each other, take a 1-inch PVC pole, bend it over, get a roll of plastic, painter's plastic that you can get at Home Depot or Lowe's, and stretch it over. And they have these little clips that you can buy. They're $1.99, so they're super cheap. And just clip your plastic down on top of the plastic and let the ground warm up for a little bit under the hoop house. And then next week I'm removing the plastic and I'll be planting lettuce and spinach and covering it. And hopefully by the end of April, we'll have lettuce and spinach.
Wow. Would you say having the beds off the ground, it has a big benefit in terms of pests too?
Well, you would think so, but I don't know. And I think you do have to look at companion plants, you know, plants that help each other out with pest control. We have a lot of skunks in our neighborhood, and our skunks literally climb up into the beds and are searching for grubs, which of course I hate. And grubs are very, very hard to get rid of. And I've had issues with grubs. So I'm happy I have skunks. I do nothing to discourage them from coming, but they dig around the whole edges of the entire raised beds.
Wow.
In search of grubs.
But they don't necessarily touch any of your crops?
No.
Wow.
No.
Look at that.
And grubs don't like garlic, and they also don't like bitter greens like sorrel. So sorrel's an interesting, really not an herb, it's a green. It's a bitter green. It's kind of a cross between, I'd say, spinach and dandelion,
Kale.
I'd say, almost dandelion. And, one of the great things about those types of things, and even if you have a lot of fresh herbs, is that, everybody I think is familiar with basil pesto and making pesto with basil. When you get a lot of basil coming in, people typically will make basil pesto. But you can make pesto out of anything, and including any of the herbs that you have a lot of, or a combination of herbs. And again, pestos are really just a combination of greens, herbs, and flavoring with olive oil, typically some kind of nut, usually pine nuts, but you can use walnuts, you can use almonds, and then Parmesan cheese. So it's a pesto that's made together, and it's super easy to make. You can freeze it, and then it's easy to put 1 or 2 tablespoons on hot pasta, and you have a very healthy meal full of lots of fresh herbs. Sorrel is one of those things that to eat it's very bitter, but you can make a lovely pesto with it. And if it is a bitter green, you can also add honey to give it a little bit of sweetness, and also raisins. So when I make my sorrel pesto, I add raisins and a little honey, including the olive oil, pine nuts, and then your Parmesan cheese.
Wow. Now, the people at the center, the seniors there, are they encouraged, or can they, if they have an interest in gardening, be part of the gardening process?
Absolutely. Then many seniors, that's one of their hobbies, is gardening, and they love to garden. So, we are right now just starting, to start seeds and planting things, and they go out and help weed. We always do corn husking every year. We love to do corn husking and put corn up. So the seniors always help with that project. We have roses, and so I'm actually going to train one of our seniors to start pruning the roses and encourage them to go out and pick roses when they're in full bloom. We also dry all of our petals for treatments in our spa, and so we don't use any kind of pesticides or anything on any of our roses. The fruit trees, of course, are very sensitive and have to be fertilized and treated with a kid glove. They're very susceptible to pests and infections, and so fruit trees are a little more difficult to manage. But we have apricots, peaches, cherries, apples, and quinces. Quinces, again, are another interesting fruit that I think has a high nutritional value, but it also is high in pectin, and so you can make jams out of it very easily. Again, it's one of those fruits that you have to process. So I think that's probably one of the hardest things for people to do is, think that they have to process, because we can go to the store, we can buy everything in a bag. It's already clean. It's already ready. You don't have to do anything. And so when you have a garden, you have to get used to processing. And for a lot of people, that's a commitment of time, and it is. But the results are so fulfilling and so healthy, and the benefits are so great that I think it's well worth it. So I freeze, I do all that stuff, and so I really love it, and I hope to encourage others to try it and enjoy the process. You can do it with a friend; it's even more fun.
Now, it started with you having your own passion for gardening, and then that transcended to the center?
Yes. So I grew up in Pennsylvania, where, there's gardening is sort of part of second nature there. I mean, there's so much greenery, and it's so easy to grow things there. When I came to New Mexico, I was a little shocked because obviously if you don't water, you're really not going to be able to grow anything. In Pennsylvania, we never really irrigated because of the rain. We have so much rain. And the back east, I mean, that's why we have such beautiful dairies and farmers markets, and I grew up in the Amish country. Fresh cheese, wow. And my favorite is Lebanon bologna. Like I just which I can't get here. So coming to New Mexico was a challenge, and even when I got here, and I moved here in 1984, there weren't even any farmers markets then. We didn't have any. I was shocked, and so. Gardening obviously is a challenge here, but it certainly is not impossible. And you just have to be a little more diligent about it. And we are fortunate now that we have farmers markets now in New Mexico. They take EBT cards. They do take the food stamps. We have a very strong senior program here to support seniors being able to buy at the local farmers markets. We have meal sites. We have senior centers that are also working with local farmers for fresh produce and products to come into the meal sites so that they can be produced. Also, our schools also work a lot with our local farmers to have healthy food for our children, which is equally as important. I think if you're not eating healthy all your life, you can suffer. And I think unfortunately, we're going to see a worldwide epidemic of poor nutrition because of the state of some of our neighbors, and the unfortunate reality is that nutrition is a key critical element of healthy living and growing old well. So I'm sad to see that, and I hope we can continue to work hard to support countries that need help. I think it's important.
Well, you're right on that path there in terms of your passion, but also making sure that those at the center also benefit from homegrown things. And I 1,000,000,000% agree with you. Our food supply is tainted. We have big challenges, and most of us don't even realize it. Yeah. We think what we're eating is okay. We think it's been checked by the government, but right down to even pet food. Pet food is not regulated by the FDA. They can put whatever they want in it. Nobody even knows what's in your pet food. Just an example of what's going on there. And you take a look at the ingredients in French fries. You go to the UK, it's 3 ingredients. Here in the United States, it's 17.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, all the prepared foods that we have, and I know how convenient it is. And when you're working and you have children and you have the demands,
sure,
there's nothing easier than opening up something and just heating it up. And I certainly know the value of that. And sure. I don't want to condemn anybody for using processed foods, but on the other side of that coin is that, you are eating not the healthiest thing that you could, and there are consequences to that. So it is a balance. And a lot of people forget that, meals don't have to be complicated. They don't have to be gourmet. They can be really good basic foods that you are controlling what's going into that dish and not allowing somebody else to control it. So even though, it's hard to do, like I cook all the time, I rarely go out to eat. And, I'm exhausted when I get home, but it's easy to make a very simple little dish. And like I said, it doesn't have to be complicated. So I encourage people. We live in such a world where everybody wants the pill to cure everything. We want simple solutions to everything. We don't want to work very hard at, creating our environment to be perfect. But, all that takes hard work, and it takes time, and it really takes a commitment. And I think we just have to sort of change that mentality that, we're so busy. We don't have time to really take care of ourselves. And, we just have to remember that what you put in your mouth and what goes into your body, it affects how you look, how you feel, how you age, your mental capacity, your physical strength, all of those things. And it starts when you're a child, and children have to eat well. We know that. There's millions of studies out there. I don't think we have to have another study. I think we can pretty much safely say that if you don't eat well, you're not going to do well. I mean, that's what I said. So you just have to have common sense. I think sometimes we can overanalyze everything. And like I said, you can read a million reports on nutrition and how nutrition has changed and what you shouldn't eat and simple complex fats. All that information is out there for you to study. But I think just use good common sense.
Well,
that if you put parsley on some potatoes, it's better than eating a potato with nothing on it. Put the parsley on it. The parsley's good for you.
Yes, and what you're saying is what I'm thinking. Every little bit helps, and we have busy lives. We got to heat stuff up and all that. But if you introduce some vegetables in your life that are either certified or where they actually came from, or you cook the dish, we're closer to being healthier. Love what you're doing. Thanks for sharing everything today. Thanks for the tips as well with the grinder. Duly noted.
Yeah, don't forget, you can get these at Goodwill. They're like $5.
I went to one of those recently and I picked up a bunch of stuff like extension cords and a hard drive for a computer, like $5, $3 here and there. Yeah. And guess what? We're recycling, which is, another.
That's exactly right.
Website for the Center for Ageless Living is NM, as in New Mexico, agelessliving.com. Do I have that right?
That's correct. And you could also email me, Suzette at nmagelessliving.com, and start gardening. Get out there.
Love it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We'll catch up next time, Suzette.
Okay.
Thanks. We'll be right back.
Bye-bye.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hi, this is Terry Crews, actor, former football player, game show host, father of 5, and all-around big dude. I'm also an expert on drama. I know all kinds of drama. There's the good kind that comes with having a house full of kids. There's the bad kind, like season-ending injuries. There's the necessary kind, like having an agent in Hollywood. And there's silly drama, like the drama around my percolating pectorals. And then there's the drama you can skip.
Skip the drama that comes with not having your high school diploma or equivalency. Find free adult education classes near you and finish your high school diploma. Visit finishyourdiploma.org.
Or text diploma to 97779. Message and data rates may apply. Reply STOP to opt out. That's diploma to 97779. And leave the drama to actors like me.
Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ed Council.